Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining the UK AI Women in AI podcast. I'm Zara Shah. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the people listening and watching.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me to be on number one. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Jenny Garrett. I run a leadership and coaching consultancy, and we're celebrating 20 years this year. So I'm really proud of that. My heritage is from St. Lucia and Jamaica in the Caribbean, but I've lived in the UK all of my life, and very proud of all my heritage and my where I am a citizen as well. My work, really, I started off as a marketer and then was introduced into coaching, found it personally and professionally transformational for me, and took the leap to leave an organization to start my business 20 years ago. It started off me as one person on my own and has grown and developed. I have around 40 coaches and facilitators delivering our programs now, and a core team of 5 people. And we work with organizations like National Gas, the NHS. We work with some global companies as well, particularly with their European branches that they have. The heart of my work is really ensuring environments are inclusive, helping leaders be equipped for the future through developing their entrepreneurial skills, even when they're in an organization, and really help making sure no one falls through the cracks when AI is implemented. So it's very much a people and leadership focus
Mhm.
to my work, even though I touch on the tech side.
That's wonderful. Jenny, how did you start in this career path?
Yeah, my last role, employed role, I was the marketer in a business school. And a friend, at the time was a colleague who's now a really good friend, came into my office and said, "Where next? Where are you going in your career?" And I remember thinking, I'm doing really well in my career. What does she mean? Where am I going next? And she said, "You could do more. You could train people in marketing on the leadership programs." At the time, I was a very nervous public speaker, and I said I could never do that. And then she said, "What about coaching? You come up, when people speak to you, they come away with actions, they come away motivated. So actually, you'd be a really great coach." And because I was working at a business school, they had a relationship with a university, and I ended up completing a postgraduate certificate in coaching with Lancaster University. It made me look at myself and everything I was doing really differently, sort of peel the layers off of who I thought I was and see who I wanted to be, really. And I found I loved coaching. The power of a good question to transform someone's life. That's how I see it. If you ask someone a really good question, it just makes them think differently, realize their potential, see the world from a new perspective, see themselves bigger and better than they ever did before. So I fell in love with coaching. I went back to my organization and said, "I just want to be a coach." And they said, "You're employed as our marketer." And I felt a bit stuck. And then I got some coaching myself. And through that coaching, my coach, we decided that I'd go down to 4 days a week. On the fifth day, see if I could build a business, see if I really did love coaching. And I did. Within a year, I'd set a target for myself financially. Within a year, I was achieving it. And I took that leap to work for myself. And it's been a really windy journey. I've written 2 books on the way, which have really, I think, boosted my business and the way I work. The first one was for women. It was called Rocking Your Role, a guide to success for female breadwinners. I've been the main earner in my relationship since I started doing this work, since I started my own business, because my husband decided to work with young people, which didn't pay as much, but is very noble work. And so writing about being a female breadwinner was quite a big thing for me to be open and be vulnerable about that. But I found there was just a huge tribe of women in the same situation. And then about 4 years ago now, I wrote another book called Equality versus Equity. And that was about tackling issues of race in the workplace. So I like to write. Those things are really important to me to get to get a body of work out there that can help people think differently. And there were two other things in my journey. I have a social enterprise called Rocking Your Teens, which I started 13 years ago when my daughter was a teenager. I wanted her to receive inspiration and increase her aspirations. And at that age, they don't listen to their children, their parents. So I knew I'd have to get someone else to say it to her. And I realized that I wasn't alone. So I wanted to inspire other young girls and boys. And I have something called the Diverse Executive Coach Directory. Interestingly, coaching is not a particularly diverse field. There's quite a lot of barriers to entry financially, and it becomes a bit cliquey. It's often middle class, middle-aged women, and not particularly those from minoritized backgrounds. So I decided to create a directory so that people could find those diverse coaches and increase their visibility. I think that's been going about 5 or 6 years now as well. So I like starting things.
Yes, your journey is amazing and fascinating to listen to. I was just thinking while you were sharing your journey that I love the idea of the powerful questions, but it must also depend on whether a person wants to change. Sometimes you can, what's the saying? You can take the horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink the water. I wonder if what were the key challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome those challenges, particularly in your journey as a coach?
Yeah, I think the point you made about if people don't want coaching, you definitely have to be coachable. And I definitely, and my organization doesn't engage in coaching that's remedial. So, we're trying to force someone to change. But if people want to change, or they're open to the process of getting better at something or being better, then absolutely, it's a wonderful journey. I think the thing about coaching when I first started was that I love coaching so much, I still do, that I would have done it for free.
Mhm.
And if there are any women listening who are running a business, one of the things that I learned is that really when you run a business, particularly when you're in the beginning, if you're a sole business person, you spend about a third of your time actually doing the work you love,
Mhm.
and maybe about a third of it marketing and a third of it on admin. And so the third of the money needs to add up to 100% of your salary. And if you only charge it as if you were going to be paid for every minute of every day, you cannot live. So I think a challenge that I initially had was, how do I charge for something that I love doing, that I would be happy to do for free, for the longevity of my business? And I did find it hard, asking for what I want, charging for what I deserve to be paid. And seeing it as a business rather than just this wonderful thing that I love doing. So I think that was an initial challenge. I definitely have experienced imposter syndrome on my journey. I remember even after writing my first book, people would say, "Oh, Jenny, the author," and I'd be like, "Who? Who are they talking about?" I'm not an author. I wrote a book, but I don't know how that happened. So yeah, I definitely had a lot of imposter syndrome around the writing journey, and I think just running a business, paying staff, being the boss, and knowing that a lot falls on your shoulders. There were times and have been times when the phone hasn't rung and you're thinking, oh, how am I going to pay salaries? How am I going to keep going? So those have been some of the challenges. And I think maybe the biggest one, I started the business when my daughter was 4. And there was a lot of juggling. Yeah, there's been a huge amount of juggling. In the beginning, the school calling and saying something, saying, "Oh, she's fallen over in the playground," and me saying, "Well, I'm about 100 miles away right now. You're going to have to call her dad," and just feeling very judged for not being in the playground enough and all of that sort of thing. Yeah, those are just a few of the challenges, I think.
I think a lot of women face those challenges where they feel that whatever they're doing is not enough.
Mhm.
Another thing that you mentioned was very interesting is how you can do it for free. That shows that it's your true passion.
Yeah.
Sometimes people find it hard to identify. Everybody tells you follow your passion, but a lot of people don't
Mm,
know what their passion is.
no.
When you mention that you can do it for free, that means this is your calling, or this is what you're truly passionate about.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Are there any current or future projects that you are that you think would be interesting for you to share with people?
Yeah, what happened for me, if we're, thinking about AI, was that it was in 2025. I woke up on New Year's just feeling quite gloomy about AI,
Mhm.
thinking everything that I was hearing was that, it's going to take over the world. We're going to be left in the wilderness. No one's going to have a job. I was hearing so much of that in the podcast that I was listening to, in the media that I was hearing, and I was feeling it was very negative. My daughter had just been made redundant from her role and was starting a startup. And I said to her, if you've got the capacity, can you research to see if there are any good news stories about AI, particularly around fairness? Because I'm hearing how biased it is, how terrible it is. But, whenever there's terrible stories, there has to be good stories. When a disaster happens, they always say, look for the helpers. There's always someone doing something good, even in the worst situations. So she started researching, and very quickly she found some examples from all over the world of people doing great things using AI, whether that was things like helping in healthcare, in IVF, helping with the digital divide, developing countries who weren't getting access to education, using AI for that. There were just so many examples. Refugees who wanted help with when they came to another country to be able to requalify so they could work. And there were just so many great examples of using AI to help people. And I said, wow, this is really exciting. So we started a podcast, AI for Equity. In June last year, and I'd already written a couple of books, and I got a lot of interest. We got so much interest from the podcast, people saying, I wasn't going to get involved with AI in my work, but now I've listened to your podcast, I'm joining the steering committee, or I listened to, your podcast about deep fakes, and I'm speaking to my mum about it. So, and now as a family, we have a safe word for in case, just in case, and things like that. And I just thought this is helping people, and this is really interesting to people. So we approached the publisher that I had Emerald previously and put in a book proposal, and we got a book deal last October. And that book, we wrote it, we handed it in April, the finished manuscript, and it comes out in October this year. And so we're so excited about that. It's 12 different people that we've spoken to understand what they're doing around equitable AI and how they're making a difference. And we really want to inspire people and to think about AI intentionally, to bring those use cases around AI from the margins into the center so that we really amplify them, and yeah, help people really think about how they can ensure that no one's left behind when the implementation of AI happens. So we're really excited about the book. I've written it with my daughter, and that's just been something wonderful as a mum, to have a podcast with my daughter, to write a book with my daughter. It's just I feel really blessed actually to have this time with her, because at some point she's going to go off and start a family, or travel the world, whatever she decides to do. But I'm really having some quality time with her.
That's wonderful. Um, what advice would you offer to other girls, especially, girls like your daughter, who want to enter this field but are very nervous, or, they hear all the negative stories and feel hesitant?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say go for it, but I think expect, the challenges, that if you're young, people will underestimate you. I think there's a lot of bias against young people right now. People, so much said about them. They're lazy, they don't want to work, they expect everything handed to them. There's a lot of judgment without actually knowing young people. So I think expect that you'll experience bias, and then you're a woman on top of that. Kimberly Crenshaw, who talks about intersectionality, says when it comes to that kind of bias, it's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's a compound effect. So, you're young, you're a woman, maybe you're you're neurodivergent, or you're from an ethnically diverse background. It gets bigger and bigger. But also know there's a huge community. There's people like yourself, Sarah, and Women in AI at UKAI. There are amazing women doing fantastic things all around the world. And find your tribe of women to keep inspiring you. But also remember, if you're not part of that solution, we will be left out. We'll be missed out. Our voices won't be there. Even this week, last week, I typed in a question to Claude, and then I said, if I was a man, give me your response. And the response was hugely different. It was sort of, so much more assertive and ambitious. And that's Claude, who I think is not too bad, giving me this kind of response. So we have to know that bias exists, but we have to be in those rooms. The data has to be based on us, and we have to share our perspective to change things. So I encourage you, be part of it, but find your tribe of people to support you while you're in it as well.
What do you see yourself leaving behind? What legacy do you aim to leave behind, or you wish to leave behind?
Yeah, that's a lovely question. I think for me, everything I do is I come across a problem and I want to solve it for not just for me, for everyone. And so the legacy I want is to have been a person who helps people solve certain problems, whether that's around people finding their own answers and their own potential through coaching and leadership, whether that's around, women who are the main earner, recognizing they're not alone and that's actually a positive. You're supporting your family. Or whether that's people who are struggling with thinking about how AI fits into this world, or how they now fit into this AI world, and they can see a positive way forward, and they can see that potentially it can accelerate positive change. For me, those are the things. So it's about, I'm a person who uses my own problems to try and solve them for other people, and I hope that will be a positive legacy.
That's very, very inspirational. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Jenny Garrett OBE. I'm on, you can find my website, jennygarrett.global. Yeah, those are probably the best places to find me, LinkedIn or my website. Very easy to just type me in and look me up.
Jenny, is there anything else that you'd like to share with people watching and listening?
No, I think that's it really. I think if you're a leader in an organization, and you haven't been thinking about AI yet, this is your time. Think about how it impacts your people. Think about the people who are maybe being left behind or falling through the cracks, and actually engage in thinking about how do you lead through AI and use it to augment everyone's experience and move away from the productivity and efficiency conversation. I think that is minimizing it.
Basically, your call to action is to look at the ethical impact, look at the larger impact on human beings.
Look at the larger impact and also just look at the human, value the human. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.